Hello, and welcome back to Solutions, Parenting Tips for a Godly Soul. This week, we are speaking about the soul trait of honesty. We'll explore practical ways to help your child take ownership of this very beautiful inner development. Before we can have a conversation about honesty, we have to talk about definitions. Honesty is defined as being free of deceit or untruth. It is said that lying undermines the only standard that enables us to trust one another. That's powerful, isn't it? Rabbi Moshe Lazado calls lying a spiritual illness. There's a lot more at stake than most people realize when it comes to the soul trait of honesty. But how do we define honesty for children in a way that they can really grab hold of? Children are very visual. I love these words for a child. Honesty is defined as exactness, not adding or taking away from what is. And there are so many beautiful ways to intangibly, in touchable ways, express this to children. Putting 5 marbles on the floor or on the table, or 5 cookies on the table, and saying, how many cookies are there exactly? Don't add, don't take away, but exactly. I've heard somebody right within our community use this very same example, and I love it. I think it's a beautiful way to illustrate honesty. So let me ask you, have you ever found yourself telling your child, if you just tell me the truth, there'll be no consequences. You won't get in any trouble. Just tell me the truth. But have you also found the frustration or the confusion of seeing your child use honesty when they've lied as a get out of jail free card? Meaning, um, if you're going to punish them for having done wrong, I like the word discipline better. If you're going to discipline your child for having done something wrong, well, of course, they're not going to want to confess they've done something wrong. If you negotiate by saying, okay, no consequences, then they can kind of do something wrong, tell the truth, and there's no consequences. That can become a confusing loop to get into. I remember a parent coming to me with this very problem. She felt her child was becoming a compulsive liar. The relationship was unraveling because there was no trust within the relationship. She felt that she could never get a straight answer. And it was creating a lot of negativity in the relationship as a result. She wanted to know, what do I do if I threaten with consequences, or I discipline, my child will go to their grave defending a lie. And sometimes, if they know they're going to get away with it, they're going to use it as a get out of jail free card. And I don't know how to change this dynamic. What do I do? So the question is, how can you parent in such a way that you help your child develop the soul trait of honesty, the willingness to tell the truth because it feels good to come clean, and not as a way to get out of negative consequences? This is the key to developing honesty, is shifting honesty to something that feels good personally. You know, I love visuals. I want you to keep in mind this visual, the hero, because mom, you can be the hero when it comes to helping your child become an honest person. I want to share with you a little video clip that among the many that I use to illustrate and discuss points. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. So there you have it, a quick little video illustrating some of the reasons why a child will lie. Um, Shame has a lot to do with it. Confessing that they made a wrong choice and having to admit it. Maybe they've watched somebody else who has a very influential position in their life be dishonest, maybe dishonest at work, with money. Who knows? The wide range of reasons why people lie. Maybe it has just become acceptable. Maybe society is sending a toxic message about the end justifies the means. Whatever the case may be, understanding what's at the heart of your particular child or a spirit of dishonesty in the home can shed some light on how to correct and balance this beautiful spiritual soul trait of honesty. Okay, so why do kids lie? Let's talk about some solutions for lying. I want to share with you two. You can avoid setting your child up for failure. That's number one. Let me unpack what I mean by that. Um, I had a client who described a scenario where she wanted to test her child. She wasn't sure whether her child would be honest or not. She was doing a little experiment. So she had made some chocolate chip cookies. She had them out on the table and she had to leave the room for her a moment. And she told her 8-year-old daughter, listen, please don't eat the cookies. I know it's just before dinner, you're hungry, they smell so good, but please don't eat them. And she left the room for a little while, came back, and of course, mom had counted the cookies. And not only that, but there was crumbs around her daughter's mouth. And she said, Loila, I asked my daughter if she ate a cookie, and she said no, with the most convincing expression. I couldn't believe my daughter was lying to me. I knew for a fact she was lying. And my best efforts to have her confess, be honest, weren't working. Um, I questioned her a lot. I tried to pose the situation in so many different ways. You know, I trust you. I, I, I would hate to think that you're lying, right? All of this sort of conversation. The problem with the way this mom was handling the scenario is that children are driven by pleasure and impulse when they're very young, before they've entered into maturity, spiritual, psychological, mental, neurological maturity. And so they're driven by impulse, they're driven by pleasure, they're pain avoidant, right? We saw that in the video clip. So by poking and probing and setting a child up for basically failure when they're struggling with the truth, it's going to spiral down. It's not going in a good place because fear of consequences leads to lying. Suppressing strong urges is a learned behavior that is, it must be taught, it must be practiced, it needs trial and error over the course of time to develop the ability to resist impulse, to resist the urge, to resist pleasure for something greater, something of more value. That takes a long time. So in the early foundational years, if the language, if the testing, if the emphasis is very negative, well, a child's going to want to avoid that too, right? Children are discomfort avoidant, pain avoidant. So it doesn't set a child up for success. You can be the hero by just eliminating that whole uncomfortable place of friction by saying, let's look at this mom's scenario. Mom walks into the room. She's kind of testing things out. She sees that her child gave into the impulse by simply saying, "Oh, I see the crumbs on your mouth. I know those cookies are so good. They smell so good. Let's just put them away. Just put them out of sight so the temptation is not there." It's clean. It doesn't add insult to injury by the child realizing they gave in, they did what they shouldn't have done, they feel shame, they feel fear. Mom is, putting her child on the spot when she already knows. Very negative momentum by putting the cookies away. I see the crumbs on your mouth. You look like the hero. Imagine struggling with something, struggling to talk about it. You're embarrassed, you feel bad. And somebody just says, "Oh, I know how challenging that is. Totally. I get it. Listen, this is what we can do to just kind of get right what's been wrong." Just focused on fixing the problem. So much relief there, so much ah, freedom, right? We look at that person as someone who sort of just rescued us in our struggle. They're the hero. Mom, you do so much justice to the situation, so much restoration to the situation by just stepping in when you know something's been wrong and just saying, look, let's fix it. Let's move on. So that's one. Number two, let's focus on the feel good of being honest. When I was a child, I'm going to use my own story for this example. When I was a child, I lied compulsively, compulsively. I was in such a dark place. There was so much negativity associated with my character that lying made me feel bad, but the consequences made me feel worse. It was insult added to injury, right? So I had no motivation to come clean, to be honest. It was just a bad situation no matter what. The problem was feeling bad was the emphasis rather than feeling good about honesty. Fear of disappointment or unpleasant consequences can outweigh the pleasure of being honest. And if telling the truth simply gets them off the hook. Like if we promise them, listen, no consequences, just be honest, just tell me the truth, and a child goes for that, it gets them off the hook without learning anything positive about honesty, and the behavior just continues. They have not embraced the joy of honesty, right? They've just dodged negative consequences. Do you see the difference there? Okay. The solution is, in that scenario, be transparent. I know doing wrong, right? Giving in to that thing feels good in the moment, but it feels so bad on the inside for a long time because you know something was wrong and we're just covering it up when we lie, right? It festers in there. And if you can tell a story to your child, a personal story, children love personal stories. They love hearing how their parents are human, when their parents understand them. They love hearing stories of how a parent fixed a problem. How did they resolve it in their life? Even if there's no moral of the story, children are smart. They pick up on these things. Mom, you look like the hero when you have these conversations, when you eliminate the, you know, did you did you take the thing? Did you do the thing? Did you say the thing when you know that they did? Just eliminate it. I know how easy it could be to say or do or think or whatever, right? Let's just move the cookies out of sight so the temptation isn't there. So the question might be, well, I have a really resistant child. What do I do, right? There's always the case of the resistant child You know, mom, that it's going to take time for a child to develop the mental muscles to resist the urge, resist the pleasure for the sake of something better that's long term, that takes time, trial and error. What do you do with the child who's just taking a really long time and the relationship feels like it's just unraveling? There's a lack of trust. I want to encourage you to avoid resorting to anger. Anger makes you look bad. Anger makes you, the mom, look unstable, unsafe, unpredictable. Anger is useful, valuable, has a purpose, but it's often overused. A more powerful response is sadness, and the words that might be said might go something like, I'm so sorry that I'm feeling like I'm being lied to, like you're being dishonest. I just don't understand what it doesn't make sense what you've said or what you did. And I'm really sorry that I'm feeling that way, but I have to be honest, right? Um, but I really apologize if I'm wrong, or I really apologize that I would even think that, because I know you're an honest person. I know you want a good relationship. So you're being transparent, you're being honest, but you're not putting the negativity of the situation on a child. They're already battling all kinds of feelings and emotions and negativity on the inside. You're kind of taking it on you. Once again, sort of being the hero without dismissing what's happening and saying, um, if there's anything you want to tell me at any point that would help this kind of make more sense, that would help me um, understand better, I I would love to hear it. And just leave it. Just leave that silence. Sometimes silence is very powerful. We know what scripture says, that a gentle word can break a bone, right? So we're looking for gentleness, for sadness, for transparency without accusation. That's the best way to handle a resistant child. So I leave you with that. Thank you for joining me for Solutions. And I invite you to join us next time for our next trait of the soul: parenting tips for raising a godly child, a godly soul. Thank you.